Morning. Chadder's back again after a little sabbatical. I've got a rather interesting and I think rare little engine to show you today. This is in fact a Gordon Cornell 049D, D for dynamic, as you might see a little flash there on the side of the crankcase. This engine will come back to its history and Gordon Cornell in a minute, but this little engine is handmade, I think, hand-finished, double ball race. It was made about 1990, I think. So it probably isn't anything other than steel piston, steel liner, possibly conventional porting, but as we'll see in a minute, our friend Gordon Cornell knew a lot about porting, and this is quite a powerful little 049. Gordon Cornell was an engineer and an engine designer who I think started his career with Frog in the 50s or possibly the 60s, and was responsible for a few of their engines. He moved on later, in fact I think was invited to move to ED, Electronic Developments, the famous, yes, makers of other things like the EDB, which Gordon was not involved with. It had already been around when he joined, but he was responsible for redesigning the B and making it a much more powerful engine, and one which was really sadly overlooked after he redeveloped it, because nobody thought much of the B apart from a beginner's engine, a sport flying. And indeed, many of us cut our teeth, did we not, or our fingers on EDBs. But Cornell was more famous for the Super Fury, a 1.5cc belter from ED, which when it was finally released, having been developed from a Fury, which was not an exceptional engine, the Super Fury was the engine to beat for a few years in the 1.5 category, and in fact was not beaten until the Tiger Cubs and the Rosses, and later of course the Cox Glows came along. Nevertheless, Cornell did a lot at ED, and in fact kept them out of the financial mire for a year or two, but in fact he left somewhat disheartened because a lot of his suggestions and plans were not taken up, and had they been taken up, ED might have lasted a bit longer, but in the end they lasted for a long time, 50 years I think. After ED, Gordon went his own way really and designed engines, and indeed made engines, either in collaboration or on his own, and this is one such of these engines. Gordon sadly died a year or two, and this engine, although being made in about 1990, never saw the light of day until it was passed on with his estate, and I was lucky to get this through another party. It's a bit of a mystery, this engine, because although you can read on the web about some other dynamic engines that were groundbreaking at the time, and Adrian Duncan is one who writes extensively on these things, this engine has no trace in the literature or indeed on YouTube. So I think this is quite a rarity. I will fire it up. I have given it a few little tentative runs on a cut down 8x3 prop, and it promises to be an exceptional machine. There's a peripheral jet carb in there, which in the early days people didn't use until Cox showed the way with it. So I think there are about 20 of these made, no more. You won't see any others around unless you look very hard, and I will post something with it running when it's a bit more run in. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye bye.